Could there be links between the current UAP phenomenon and what might happen when we leave this earthly plane? Well, maybe. Now, this is a good news video, an optimistic one, at least in my humble opinion. However, going further, nothing is presented as fact. Simply what I've been told, what I've read and observed for myself. This is about finding comfort, exploring things outside the box. And that's what we have to do if we're going to unravel this complicated issue. Much of what is covered here came from asking 4 different psychic mediums. So when I asked the people in this group how they would explain life and death to others, the following is an encapsulation of what I was told and how I would best explain it to others based on what I know. Imagine we live inside a glass bottle that contains our conscious reality, the physical world we inhabit, where we buy our coffees and sit in traffic. But when we die, our conscious energy, all the electricity that vibrates within us on a subatomic level, helps carry us from our physical self to the ethereal. And here is where the bottle analogy comes into play. Perhaps, when we die, our souls, for lack of a better term, passes through the glass that makes up the bottle that holds our conscious reality, however an individual wishes to define it. It's that place where grandma and your dog from elementary school awaits. But if the soul is troubled or feels like it has unfinished business or is in denial that the person is dead, the soul, or spiritual energy for lack of a better term, might remain trapped inside the glass of the bottle, so to speak, unable to ascend completely through to the next plane and unable to return back inside. Spirits that get trapped inside the glass, when they appear to the living, may closely resemble what they looked like when they died, and sometimes having reportedly shocking appearances when people describe apparitions they may see, while others say the apparition of their grandfather in their living room, well, he was looking fit and 50, radiant, happy and smiling. But that doesn't mean trapped spirits can't be helped by others with their final transition to the other side. It is why many spirits often try to make contact with the living who have the ability to communicate back with them. The psychics I spoke to said it's not uncommon for spirits to try to contact the living, and that ignores the bigger issue of other possible sentient intelligence along the electromagnetic spectrum. And we'll get to that in a minute. We've all heard the idea of spirit guides or guardian angels, however you wish to define it. These could be interpreted as spirits from our lives who have passed or others that we never knew, those that exist outside the bottle. While we are socially conditioned to ignore our natural psychic talents and abilities that our brains have, it does not mean we can't flip our switch to allow us better access to all those channels across the energy spectrums that we can't visually see. Everyone I have interviewed on the subject, and almost everything that I have read from credible sources, talks about the balance achieved and the importance that comes from either meditation, prayer, forced bathing, long walks, yoga, quiet reflection. It is about the ability to slow down and focus the mind. It helps dig out your spiritual antenna, long buried and forgotten in your brain, helping balance the body's natural vibrational frequencies. This Tibetan monk, who began meditating at 9 years old and is now in his early 40s, has the brain of a 33-year-old, at least according to researchers at the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It demonstrates the importance and the benefits of looking after your mind, and that speaks to the ability to find balance within the individual and the role that it plays in plugging us into the existence that is all around us. It is simply about our ability or inability to pull in those signals. It's like you can almost feel it. And you'd be right. You already know how it works. That eerie feeling, ever been creeped out? Well, that's it. What you're feeling is what your brain and body is picking up naturally, likely across the electromagnetic spectrum, frequencies and energy waves encompassing the entirety of our existence. If someone is giving off bad energy, they likely are, according to your own frequency settings, and you'd be right to listen to your brain and your gut. Now, just take that concept up to another floor and think about amplifying the signal. The idea of feeling good vibes or bad vibes about something, well, that same principle applies to perhaps spirits when they try to contact us or we try to contact them. While you might not be able to see your grandmother, she is likely there, at least according to the psychics, just on another energy frequency. And you should talk to her or whomever that person is. Don't be afraid. At least that's what they said. You don't need anyone or anything to make that connection for you. And they couldn't stress that enough. You do not need anyone or anything to make that connection for you. We are all conditioned to think this stuff isn't real, or we need someone to do it for us. But when you've spent the time with people that can read your mind or point out the dead is nearby within seconds of a chance encounter, maintaining disbelief becomes an exhaustive effort of irrational denial. When we feel out of balance with ourselves, we probably are. We know when our energy is off, but the power of manifesting and spiritual communication are things that we have far more ability than we know, and none of this is in opposition to any one individual religious or spiritual beliefs. The energy that makes up our physical bodies never disappears. Like all energy in the universe, it just gets repurposed. So, if you accept that when you get that gut feeling, picking up a particular energy wave, just know that same principle can be viewed through the lens of communicating with the other side. It is just a matter of tuning the right frequency, and that's something Star Trek's William Shatner also spoke about at length in our interview. From Tibet to Tennessee, the core ideals of love, compassion, joy, and understanding are the pillars that will carry all of us into the next world. But that may be just one of many things that we can't see that is still there, that science, the defense industry, and government is beginning to discover, uncover, or accept, or they already know it's there. So how do UAPs fit into all this? If our brains are able to sense the energy of entities from beyond our physical realm, like spirits as psychics do, then some have argued that part of the UAP phenomenon might involve some, not all, but craft traveling through portals from dimensions or places across the electromagnetic spectrums, or here on Earth, they simply exist on a different electromagnetic spectrum that makes it harder for our eyes to see. Whatever it is, imagine a radio station. Each station on the dial is another energy spectrum where non-human intelligence might reside or be able to communicate with us or observe, including the so-called afterlife. But as humans with our biological limitations, either deliberate, natural, or conditioned, it keeps us locked on a single station, unable to roll round and up and down the dial. Now, it's possible, as some like the CIA's John Ramirez has speculated at length, if humans were genetically altered at some point by outsiders, as was allegedly discovered after the crash in Roswell, turning off this ability might have had its advantages, or perhaps this was an issue of enhancing it to bring it up to where it is today. It's unclear. What is that most of us can only see one station, and that is the one locked into our conscious reality, where psychics can sense multiple channels. Maybe 3 or 4 for argument's sake, in an endless multiverse of stations. And that's where spirits and UAPs might collide. Some UAPs may be operating on different frequencies among the multitude that exist across the universe, waves of energy and dimensions in a sea of existence we don't know we're a part of yet. And that's not considering the whole simulation theory which, to spend a few seconds on it, might also fit into this very well. As Lou Elizondo told me, the man who ran the Pentagon's UAP program, ATIP, since everything in the universe is essentially made with the same core coding, it suggests that the base foundation for all of that came from something. That's why things like fractals and patterns and ratios repeat from one end of the cosmos to the other. It is like the same core Lego blocks for absolutely everything, no matter how big or how small you go. Pretty odd coincidence. But that'll be another video. So what about reincarnation? When it comes to reincarnation, this is where things get tricky and can descend into the depths of much, much larger ideas, conspiracies, and uncomfortable places, and I'll just drag a little toe across the surface here. One thought is that souls do cycle back into the living and can follow a path of cyclical reincarnation as Buddhists believe. How that choice is made, it's just not clear. However, some UAP theories that requires feeding out even a little more rope for the thought exercise is that there may be forces that feeds off our conscious energy. Specifically, negativity. The more chaos, fear, wrath, and unease we feel, the lower our vibrational frequencies, which makes us susceptible to those across the other parts of the energy spectrums that we can't see, that they might use our energy, something for lack of a better term, like food. Just not in the traditional sense we might think, but that's a much bigger discussion, and that's certainly not to say that that is the case. What matters is the idea of opening up your mind to different ideas and concepts, because amongst all of them, somewhere is the truth. Either all of it, pieces of it, or almost none of it. But until it's discussed, you just don't know. And this includes the fact there are elements within places like the Pentagon and other institutions of power with very strong religious beliefs that see a potential demonic aspect to all of this phenomenon, at least through their personal lens. Don't forget, the government reports looking at went on at Skinwalker Ranch talks about the idea of things like cryptids in other parts of the United States as well. Even the idea of the Navajo Skinwalkers and the many reported sightings predating the arrival of Western Europeans. It's worth noting that Catholics, Mormons, and other major religious faiths are all deeply active in the UAP movement, whether you know about it or not, and just not in ways you might suspect. Which brings us back to ghosts, holy and otherwise. While I certainly don't have the whole picture, I think I see enough to know that we are never alone and never without cause to smile. Because there is more going on all around us, and that is a good thing, even if we can't see it. Because in our hearts, in our stomachs, in our minds, we can feel it. We know they're there, and what could be more joyful than that? I'm Sean. Thanks for watching. I've deliberately kept the names of the psychics involved anonymous based on conversations that I've had. If you enjoy the content, be sure to give it a like and a subscribe. I have great new material coming all the time. If you have any thoughts or comments, be sure to leave them below. Always love to hear what you have to say. Stay tuned. Another great video is coming up next.